can hear destiny calling, calling out my name. Need no shield. Now watch me feel. Failure is not
Just 2 minutes. 2 minutes to help your body move. There you go. There you go.
I choose to thrive. I will learn the force, never on my knees. I am not the same. I'm different. I am not the same. Yeah, I am not the same.
Everything hurts so bad. Like excruciating pain. The brain is physically in so much pain. The nerves from my back of my head, through my neck, through my back.
Hi, Melissa. Welcome back to Benzo Tired.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
How are you?
Coming along, I think, like the rest of the
Yeah.
community, trying to survive, day by day.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. So a while ago, you reached out to me, saying that you've been getting a lot of questions about insomnia, and you suggested that we do an episode about it, and I was very enthusiastic. And so here we are. We're going to talk about insomnia, and mostly from our, own experiences and perspectives. And I want to start off by asking you, when was your worst insomnia coming off of benzodiazepines?
So the worst was when I first jumped 50%. I mean, while I was on the benzo as prescribed, my insomnia was obviously a major problem. And actually, what led me to psychiatric drugs in the first place was insomnia. So this was an area I was no stranger to, but there was definitely a difference with how benzos were affecting my brain unknowingly. But the worst was when I was forced to jump 50% off. And that's when, in my eyes, sleep was non-existent at that point.
Right. And let's get into the specifics of that. So how would you describe like a week? Would you get like 1 hour a night, 0 hours, 20 minutes? How would that go?
Yeah. I mean, when I first jumped, I thought I was sleeping zero. So I have to tell you, like, organic insomnia, without psych drugs is a very different animal than going through insomnia during benzo withdrawal, right? Also, there is a difference with insomnia as taking at like staying on the pill on your dosage. There's even a difference there. But once you start coming off the drug and getting injured, like myself, jumping 50%, it feels like, it feels unbearable, right? It almost feels like it amplifies all of your benzo withdrawal symptoms, everything you have, but there's a sense of toxicity that comes with it. And it feels like, that brain fog where you can't even see that car in front of you. Like you feel like you have that brain fog and it's just infiltrated with like mercury or toxicity. And the more you don't sleep, I found that toxicity sensation, which as we now know is neurotoxicity, it increased that sensation. So it was brutal. It was brutal.
Mm-hmm. And how long do you think that the worst part of that, like the unbearable, inhumane insomnia lasted for in your case?
So in my case, it was going on, I can't recall. I tapered for 7 months, probably within month 2 or 3. I got so desperate that I started to like think about, okay, what am I going to do? Like, I just want to preface kind of where I was, because I think that's really important. Because I think people are like, okay, maybe she just had insomnia or a few other symptoms. Like, I was in fight or flight. When I jumped 50%, I started convulsing, vertigo, akathisia. I was flying back and forth at rapid pace. My thoughts were racing like a Formula One car on the final lap, blazing faster than I could even catch them. It felt like I had thousands of fire ants crawling under my skin, and all I could do was bolt. I mean, I I had every symptom that I had known at that point. So I was not in a great place. So I was not sleeping. And so 2 months in, um, I got so desperate that I started considering I need to look at my data. Like I need to start looking at my numbers to know, am I really sleeping nothing? Because I am convinced I am sleeping zero. I am convinced I'm not sleeping at all. I'm in psychosis, manic, PTSD episodes, breakdown after breakdown, crying. My husband has to convince me every second, every the day, not to take my life. I mean, this is so I was getting pretty desperate. And even though I had such severe neurosis to look at the data, I did go down the route of ordering like higher quality sleep trackers. In my case, I ordered the Aura Ring and the Withing sleep tracker, which you kind of put under the sleep mattress. And I realized that I was sleeping something. I ordered both of them. Again, I had such severe neurosis. There was no way I was just trusting one device. A lot of these devices, as you know, are not the greatest. They're gonna, they're not accurate. And so that was why I went the higher end route, and I got two because I was like, there's no way one is just going to be accurate. But when I looked at the data, they were both saying around the same periods that I was sleeping. And it was like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, maybe three. Let me tell you, that is a lot more than zero. Okay. So, because I was convinced I was sleeping zero. And there's actually, and we could talk about it, why we think we're sleeping zero. Like, how does benzos affect insomnia? I think that could be an interesting discussion today of like, how do these drugs affect insomnia from an architecture perspective? Because that's very much what is happening. But I was convinced I was sleeping zero. And I think when I saw the trackers, it made me realize like, you are sleeping something. Maybe you do have the ability to sleep. So you need to just let your body and separate from it. And so my journey kind of went off from there. I could obviously talk about that in more detail. But
Right, right. But how long would you say? How long did it take you for your sleep to gradually improve?
Yeah. So once I started that, it was a couple weeks to several weeks. I was then sleeping 5 hours. I was sleeping
Oh,
4 to 5 hours, which sounds like misery for some. For me, I call it the miracle of sleep. That's literally what I
right,
call it.
right. And for the audience, I think I cut about 90% of my dose, and I was on a really high dose when sleep just flew out the window. And I had severe insomnia. Like I did have some zero nights, but I would have 1 hour nights, 2 hour nights, extremely broken, panic attacks, just night sweats, especially in the acute
Yeah.
phase, which lasted for pretty long, for about 3 months. That was just torture. But my sleep stayed very bad for about 2 years, I would say. And I think a year and a half into my journey, I decided on holding the dose that I was currently on, tapering pretty low on 4 milligrams of diazepam, aka Valium. I was going way too fast. I didn't know what to do. So I was like, I'm just going to hold and see if this works. Anyways, as the audience knows, I ended up updosing to 5 milligrams. But this is after about a few weeks when my sleep started to deteriorate again. And I started having seizures, and like someone had kicked me in the stomach, like severe cramps and utter agony, pain. And for me, updosing to the 5 milligrams in my very long, complicated journey was the thing that started to help me sleep better again. And then I think I'm going along the lines of the 5 hours, the 6 hours, and kind of like in between that. And I also had the feeling like I was experiencing 0 hours, but I read Miranda Levi's book. It's called The Insomnia Diaries, and she really does a deep delve into insomnia, and she talks to all these experts. And there's this thing called micro sleep that we apparently can have when we're not sleeping. We think we're not sleeping, but still we're sleeping just enough for all of our just to keep living, basically, for the basic things. And interesting about her story was that she got prescribed benzos in her journey of not sleeping, but she still wasn't sleeping on Klonopin or clonazepam.
Yeah.
So that's, and she really describes in her book, I'm not going to say too much, but her chapters basically start off with today was 0 hours or 20 minutes or 1 hour. And you gradually see her improving. But the insomnia for me, it got so bad. I truly believe that the insomnia, the extreme severity of it, led to the seizures. And at some point, I was just cognitively so declined, and I became hyper obsessed with sleep.
Yes.
And I think it's not for me that it wasn't like I was whining about it, but it was my body craving sleep. And all I could think about was, I just want to sleep. I just want to sleep. There's nothing else that I can think about. Then hopefully I'll get some sleep tonight, because, I wasn't getting it, and not a lot. So, and I would also say that the not sleeping part was not allowing my body to heal, or it just made the process more lengthy, as you will. So I would say we have pretty severe insomnia, you and I. So we know what we're talking about. And like I said, for me, it got better. I still have insomnia, and as the audience also knows, is I'm still not benzo free, but it's way more manageable than it was for so long. So I want to send some hope out there that, for most people, if not all people, it does get better. And I totally agree with you. The sleeplessness in benzo withdrawal is a very different monster than if you weren't harmed and you have a rough week or something. And as I'm guessing everyone knows, is when you sleep on benzos, it's not real sleep, and they suppress your REM sleep and your slow wave sleep, whatever. It's actually harming your sleep. So whenever people say sleeping pills and benzos, in one sense, I get pissed. I'm like, that shit don't exist, no. Yeah. So
it's actually quite funny to see how doctors that's their to go to, or Ambien and all of that. But these drugs suffocate the oxygen in your brain. And we could talk about a little bit, how I've understood it, at least, how they affect the brain. But for that to be the to go to, it's it actually, unless you're taking it one pill every few months or something very okay, that's one thing. But to prescribe it as a daily solution is a crime. I mean, how these drugs actually work on the brain, first off, that's how they were never created. They were never even FDA approved for that. If you read the drug insert, it literally states on there to take it for days or as, short as possible. They didn't even, there's not even clinical research by the FDA for longer than 8 weeks, for example, on Xanax. They have no idea how these drugs are affecting the brain in long term. But you have doctors repeating over, you're good. I have so many patients taking these drugs. This is these are the sleeping drugs. And it's so far from truth. For you and me both have done CBTI. That should be the first place someone should be ending up.
100%. For people that haven't listened to any of the episodes of Benzo Tired, CBTI stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Insomnia, which is interesting. I want to go get into that a little bit. We've discussed it on the episode that you were on before. But maybe the audience remembers, is that I had CBTI before coming off of benzos. And I learned a lot from that, truth be told. But yet, obviously, they did not prepare me for what was to come in benzo withdrawal. I wish that they would have told me but in your case, because basically the promise is your body should be able to regulate, sleep again in a natural way, which is true. But if you've been affected by benzos or harmed by benzos, it's a different scenario. And actually it kind of falsely led me to believe that I could just, get rid of the benzos and that my sleep would return. And then obviously I stopped sleeping, I was fighting for my life. A heart attack, strokes, whatnot, suicidal, the whole thing. And I was like, and I was basically white knuckling something because I thought my body would be able to regulate it again. But to go back on CBTI, what were your things that you thought were helpful from CBTI?
Yeah, and Naftal, I completely agree with everything you shared, because I think those are the experts that should be educated on how these drugs affect insomnia. And instead, we can walk away feeling like it's us. We're broken. right? And I think that can easily happen after you do that protocol and then you try to come off the drug and you're not sleeping. And it's like CBTI, it's, the number one protocol. And I think in many ways it is a great protocol. And I think there's also things to it that may not always be the best, especially when we're going through, benzo withdrawal. But my experience, so I was actually going through serotonin syndrome when I was doing CBTI. I was actually forced to kind of stay on the drug before coming off of the drug, which was clearly poisoning me, but that's what I was asked to do, stay on the drug to finish the protocol and then come off. For me, it was getting me to sleep. Because I was going through serotonin syndrome, I developed severe OCD. I developed somniphobia, which is obviously the fear of sleeping, which is very common also through benzo withdrawal and benzo injury is somniphobia. So, because of those things that I developed, it was very challenging because now I was binded to the protocol. Like if I had touched a window, I was not sleeping. If I touched a doorknob, I was not sleeping, right? And these are byproducts of these drugs. But with the combination of CBTI, those things were I was now battling. But I think CBTI is a great protocol. I think that is the first place someone should start, instead of going down the psychiatric drug path.
Absolutely.
But CBTI during benzo withdrawal was not possible for me. And I think, if you go to a CBT therapist, they'll like push you. Yes, you need to do this protocol. And I think it is very difficult for us to do protocols. And maybe there's some people listening that are healthy enough and are able to stick to a protocol. But even outside, if you have the ability to stick to the protocol, there's, again, architecture changes to the brain because of benzos that prevent insomnia. So that was why I took parts of sleep hygiene that helped me through my journey. That was kind of part of the thing that I put together. I took parts of it and we could talk about it. And I know with you, you and me have a very similar journey here where we can't get out of the bed. So to back up a little bit for the listeners, part of the protocol is like, you have to go to sleep, the same time every day and wake up the same time. You have to get out of bed if you're not sleeping and go sit on the couch and maybe read a boring book until you're ready to go back to sleep. Those are things, I could speak for myself, was not possible. I was so severely ill. That's like putting someone's head holding their head underwater, drowning, and you're like, are you ready? Are you ready to do a protocol? Let's do this, right? That's what it's like.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
For me, the main takeaway from all of these protocols were try to get relaxed before you go to sleep. Try to be as, what's the word? Just calm. And if you have stress, if you're thinking about things, write them down, but make sure that before you go to bed, that you have space in your brain, basically, and find that space in your brain which relaxes you, like maybe a park, maybe something else that relaxes you. Like some people talk about, I think about sex when I go before going to sleep, and it helps. Whatever you need, even if it's like some people will do like mathematical equations that make them tired and calm them down and fall asleep. And then the interesting part was like, okay, I think I can do this. I've got the protocol now. And then you go into benzo withdrawal. And obviously my brain exploded. So like, how the fuck am I wasn't like fucking calming down. Like I need to calm down. I'm not fucking calming down here. I'm losing my mind. And I was like, this is not working. And, obviously it was because of the drug. So in general, it's helping me now. Like, just make sure that you're relaxed. And try not to stress about what tomorrow brings. And if you don't sleep, or just, try not to get upset about the lack of sleep if there's going to be some. But those two things, I wasn't able to calm down because of severe, benzo withdrawal, dropping like 90% of my very high dose, which was insane. And what was the other thing? And not worrying about the lack of sleep. I could do that for like a week or two, where it's like, okay, I only slept for 1 hour, 2 hours. But as that stacks, I became so exhausted. I was like, this is like a marathon. This is not manageable. Like like I said, I think my insomnia was so severe that it led to all my issues becoming worse and worse and worse, and my heart pounding out of my chest. It led me, I mean, I didn't know what to do anyways, but it led me to requesting propranolol because my heart was racing so crazy fast the whole time, so unnatural. I'd never had a heart issue before. I was like, this is insane. I think by then I found the Astra manual, and with the gift of hindsight, it was not the wisest thing for me to do. I get it. Like, I look back at the time, it was like reasonable logic. Like Ashton said, it could be safe and you could use it and blah, blah, blah. But I should have updosed my benzo or reinstated instead of doing the propranolol, because with the gift of hindsight, it made my insomnia even worse. And it actually exacerbated some of my issues. And getting off of propranolol can be life-threatening. And it was for me. So yeah, so all with the gift of hindsight. So basically what I'm saying is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, great for people who haven't been harmed by psych meds. But there should be kind of like an asterisk or an addendum or whatnot, like, oh, but you've been severely fucked by these drugs, and we're going to have to find different ways, or you're going to have to find different ways to cope. Like, for example, that thing, getting out of bed in the middle of the night and watch TV. Like I had zero strength to do that. Like I was just too exhausted, and I was like, I was too sick.
You're too sick.
So I didn't, I never did any of those things. What I later discovered, and we're going to get into that later on, I think on this episode, but I was going on time. I was going to bed on the same times every night. So I felt like I had mastered that. But later on, I discovered that I wasn't going to bed on the time that my body should be going to bed because of my chronotype and being a night owl, which I had zero knowledge about that I was. What it did teach me, the cognitive behavioral therapy, was that I thought I never had anxiety and stuff, but I did have anxiety because of being a night owl. I used to had to rush to work and school, and I came late. I came in late sometimes. It got me into trouble. So I learned that I definitely had a fear. And that was, losing a job, or, not making certain things happen because of my fear for the alarm and being tired and all that. So it did make me reflect on my fears and stuff. So it was helpful in that regard. So as you start to sleep better at some point in your journey, do you feel like, did you do more research on insomnia at that point?
So at that point, no. My benzo research, at that point, I was relying on my husband to do research. At that point, I was not reading, clinical journals. I was not doing courses. That was not happening. I was fighting for my life. Insomnia was one piece. And I have to say, I think, why I think this conversation is so important, because I think, to your point earlier as well, is that I think insomnia is one of the worst, if not the worst symptom, only because it does make our other symptoms worse. We're talking about having convulsions, akathisia, DPDR, vertigo. I mean, these symptoms, neuropathy, occipital neuralgia. I mean, these symptoms are horrific, right? One of these symptoms would lead someone to walk off the earth. We're talking about a combination of this, and then insomnia, which amplifies. And like I said, there is definitely a neurotoxicity component. I mean, for me, it was just pure toxicity, and day after day, it was really challenging. And I think what's interesting about both our cases, right? We have someone that during the process of tapering or on the drug, you figured out, okay, I'm going to up, and that's where you're going to stabilize. Where my case, I was already off. Like, going on was not an option. Like, that was not an option. And now I need to fucking figure things out real fast. So I think that's what's really interesting about hearing both of our stories. But I did not do research until more recent times, over the last year and a half, when I started understanding. But for me, it wasn't about the research that got me to sleep. It was, I figured it out on my own. I started, I think the whole, I really think there is a place for biohacking, like the Aura Ring. That's biohacking at its finest, where we're looking at data, and that data is now convincing me of something. And I started to develop new neural pathways as I started to, okay, I got this data. I started convincing myself that you have the ability, separate from your mind and body, go sit behind the soul. So that was a big part of what I did. I remember someone telling me, your soul sits behind your heart. And I was like, okay, well, if I can't project out of this body, I can't astral project because I'm too scared. too much of a damaged nervous system to project out of the body, I'm going in. And so I started just telling myself, I'm not my mind. I'm not my body. You can keep racing. You want to race 120 miles like Eminem spitting? Go ahead. You could do what you want. I'm separating from you. And I would start sitting behind my heart. And my husband, he had no idea what I was doing. He would whisper, he's like, your breathing is changing. Your breathing is changing. I could not tell you even if I had a breath. I could not tell you right or left. I could be laying in a bed and not tell you what direction I was laying in. I was gone. But what mattered was I was separating from my mind and body. And so that was a big piece of right, building new neural pathways, right? I think when people hear building new neural pathways or neuroplasticity, it sounds like these protocols or these intricate things. They're not. Neural pathways essentially is a new belief, a new behavior. That is it. Once you put a new belief or a new behavior in place, that pathway starts developing and it starts to become stronger and stronger, that pathway. And so that is what I did at its finest. And plus I did do a few other things that did come from the CBTI protocol. So for example, I avoided staying in bed. So I was horribly ill. I just needed to make it to the couch. So from the bed to the couch. But that was better so I could at least dissociate the bedroom, right? The whole idea is to keep the bed associated with sleep time. And so if that was one of the things I could do, I did that. Another thing that I did was I kept the lights on in the living room, even if it was on a dim. That was better than keeping it dark because the bedroom needs to be associated with dark, right? There's these small little things that could help us. Something else I did was I would turn off my mobile or TV 2 to 3 hours. For me, the TV or my mobile, that thing is like clipping into my nervous system, that blue light. And I could not. Like, I would rather read a boring book because I was so unlikely to sleep if I was watching TV or had my mobile. So I did that. And I also went to bed when my brain and my body told me it was time. Like, I was like, okay, you need to start listening. Like, stop going to bed when you think you should go to bed. You should go to bed when your brain and your body is saying it's time to shut off. Like, it's like a switch button. And that was a big deal. And I remember discussing this with you as well, like, because we deal with time zone changes. I was not doing time zone changes. Like,
me neither. I haven't done it for 3 years now. I was like, fuck this shit.
Exactly.
No, I'm not doing it anymore. And I won't do it again. I mean, it's happening next month. Supposedly, I'm not really sure what Trump's going to do about it, but at least here in Europe. But I'm still not changing.
Right.
So now I'll be going to bed, for example, somewhere between midnight and 1 a.m. and I'll just shift 1 hour later according to the daylight savings time. So getting into that, there were two things that I wanted to say. So I have a similar thing in terms of shutting off before going to bed. Like maybe an hour before I go to bed, I'm like, okay, it's an hour away. Yeah. I'm gonna find that place in my brain that is gonna turn off all the switches slowly. I'm going to go into relax mode. So I'm not going to play some sort of video game that is very exciting. I'm not going to watch a TV show or a movie that is very like a thriller or something. No, this is already going to be my winding down time, So, and I find this place in my brain where I'm like, it's time to start shutting off before you go to bed. And I think that's very important to do. So that's one thing that, I was thinking about. And the other thing, now that we're getting into it, is chronotypes. It's one of the things that I found kind of later in the journey, and it just clicked for me and made so much sense because I remember that the CBTI was basically saying everyone should go to bed around the same time. Like, we're all the same people and we all go to bed at like 11 or 10. And I found this podcast. It's called, I think it's Matt Walker, and he's a sleep scientist, and he's like very fascinated about sleep, and he has a podcast and all these different themes, and he also talks about benzodiazepines in one episode, and the stuff that's in weed, THC, and coffee, and what nicotine, and all these things, what they do for sleep and all that. And then he started to talk about chronotypes, because there's a guy that made a schedule basically stating there's 4 chronotypes. The dolphin is basically a shitty sleeper. And then we have the bear, which would be most people, they go to bed around 10 or 11 p.m. and they wake up in time, like 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning. And then we've got lions, which are basically the morning people. They go to bed really early, around 8, and they wake up pretty early. And then the wolves are the night owls, and those are usually typically creative people, blah, 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 which they say, but then you go to bed around midnight. I was like, it kind of clicked for me. I was like, wait a second, I think I've been a night owl my whole life. I just adjusted to the whole society thing, the 9 to 5, because I had a job at the time that required a 9 to 5 mentality. My partner is a quote unquote bear, so he will go to bed on around 10 or 11 p.m. So I just adjusted. But one of the things that the scientists said on this podcast, basically everyone sleeps around the same hours a week, but the night owls or the wolves, they basically have a sleep depravity during the work week, so they will sleep in on weekends because they're sleep deprived. So it's like he's describing me pre-benzo. So learning that, I was like, okay, fuck this shit. Fuck this 9 to 5 mentality.
Yeah.
It's not working for me. It's never worked for me. So I'm just going to create a life where I'm able to start later in the day for a job if need be. It's challenging, but I'm making it work. How about you? I thought that maybe you were a morning person.
Yeah, and I think this is actually quite interesting because I think we see how the system puts us all in the same box, and you're going to the experts, right, the CBT therapists, convincing you need to fit into this box. And I think this is a really important conversation. I am the opposite. I need to go to bed really early. I mean, I'm going to bed these days 7:30, sometimes 6:30. This week there were days I was going to bed at 6:30. I do not adjust to time zone change. I could care less what the rest of the world is doing. I am too ill. My brain does not work like that anymore, and I am not participating. But I go to bed at 6:30, 7:30, and I sleep till 4 a.m. I'm getting a good amount of hours at this point. I still deal with insomnia? Yeah. Are there nights that I turn and toss all the time? And are there nights that I get 5 hours of sleep? Yeah, that still happens. But I do sleep pretty much every night. I feel blessed on that. But again, that was because of a lot of the things that I did. And also, I had taught myself how to sleep in during tapering, because I jumped 50% and then I tapered 7 months. So I had no idea about bind or pause or protracted withdrawal syndrome, however we want to refer to it as, but I had zero idea what I was about to walk into. And so once I entered into bind, again, that caused havoc on that front, but I was actually no longer able to even leave my bed. I was 98% disabled. I couldn't even feed myself, clean myself. I still don't take showers on my own. My husband has to help shower me these days still. So, so I'm very much, I'm very much protracted, unfortunately, from these drugs. But once I entered bind, I still had that, the work that I had done. I don't want to say even work, because it was part of survival. It was I need to figure out how to sleep. And for me, it actually worked out better than the protocol, because I don't rely on a protocol. I just trust myself. And I also know that there's days that I wake up in the middle of the night and my cortisol spikes. It feels like someone's injecting poison into your body and your heart's racing and you're dizzy and all of this. That's what it still is like that for me. But when that happens, I just radically accept it. I'm like, all right, well, there's nothing you can do. You're probably going to be up for 2-3 hours. Just ride it out. And if you go to sleep after, great. And if you don't, I radically accept that. A radical acceptance is a big theme, I think, because it just brings less suffering. Why do we need to keep punishing ourselves when it's something so much out of our control? I think if we could give ourselves grace.
And I think for me, the best tool for me to get the best amount of sleep and the quality of sleep is to not stress, or try not to stress about things. And with radical acceptance, that comes with that. It's rewarding that it calms you down.
That's right.
So I'm wondering a few things, actually. So my first question would be, just because I'm interested, do you think that you were always a morning person prior to bind?
Always. I was that person up at like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock hitting the gym. That was me.
Really? And
Always.
how would you also go to bed at the same time that you're
No,
doing now?
no.
No, you would, okay.
I
It's
would
so
be at
interesting.
dinner.
It is so, I think it's so fascinating. And even that scientist, the Matt Walker guy, if I get his name, if I'm getting his name right, he also said like for that we basically we're asking these people to adjust to our society, but it should be us. So, giving them space
I love
because
it.
it's basically damaging them to not allowing them to sleep whenever they're it's genetically programmed. There's
Yeah.
nothing that they can do about it. Probably, I think I saw this on social media, and usually I'm very, careful with what to believe, but apparently I do believe this actually. I think there's a gene for the night owls, and it goes back to when we were living in like tribes and stuff, and someone had to like be the guard at night. So it's a genetic thing. There's still a spectrum. So you can be a night owl,
Yeah.
but you go to sleep at midnight. Or you can be an extreme night owl that goes to bed at 3 a.m. And you can be an extreme morning person. All of these things, there is a spectrum. And if you're listening to this and you're wondering what type you are, then just there's a very simple question that could answer this, and then kind of like put bind aside and think back when you were healthy and sleeping normally. If you were on a deserted island for about a week and there was when would you want to go to sleep? When would you fall asleep? That's basically the question. And it's very easily answered because I used to hate my alarms. I used to hate working in the mornings. The job that I had before I got poisoned on the job, as you will. I still have that job, but there was some flexibility in that job, and I actually sacrificed 2 of my contract hours so I could sleep in a little bit and start at 9:30. It was I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. At least less rushing for me during the day. I should have listened to that. I feel like the whole insomnia thing, all of these things, like we learn so much in school, like how to we get prepared to work in the workforce and stuff, and we even learn about food and what's healthy and what's not healthy, and we learn that killing people isn't a good thing to do. But why aren't we learning about sleep? It's so freaking important. Like I wish that there was more time on sleep hygiene and chronotypes and all these things, and also stay away from benzos. I wish because you get taught by your parents and in school, like stay away from heroin and don't do drugs and all that shit, and then we get poisoned by our doctors with other drugs that are even worse. So I'm like, we're really messing up with education and stuff. So
that's right. And you actually said something. So I think it's really interesting. We are all snowflakes. Every single one of us have a different body. Like fundamentally, we work different than each other. And I think systematically, culturally, a lot of us are actually shamed, right? Like I'm sure you were almost, I mean, maybe this is more of an open question here. Like, did you ever feel shamed by people because you wanted to sleep in, because you couldn't get up?
Yes.
Like,
there's a stigma. Yeah. And actually the scientist too says these people are not lazy. These people are not lazy. That it's their chronotype.
That's right.
But yeah, I got in a lot of trouble. It's a miracle that I finished my pre-bachelor's with like almost straight A's, because I skipped a lot of the morning classes. So I did have like an angry kind of, teacher on the phone from time to time, like, hey, you've missed so many classes and we know that you're smart and stuff and you're acing all of the exams, but towards the other pupils, it's kind of difficult to, let this happen. So yeah, I did get shamed for being late.
That's right.
So I thought something was wrong with me, but mind you, this is pre-internet time. So there wasn't a Google, there wasn't a podcast or saying like, oh, it's not you, it's society that is the issue. And if I would have known that I was a night owl, I would have made different choices and maybe choose a different career path, knowing how important sleep is now. I have a question for you. So during benzo withdrawal or bind, did you have vivid dreaming and nightmares and all that?
Yes. Oh my God. I mean, I would be brutally murdered in my dreams, like limbs ripped off. I mean, heinous. I mean, I don't know what was worse, staying up and being on an acid trip that never ended. I mean, it's literally like, I am actually someone that did ketamine IV treatment, so I know what it's like to trip balls. And it was a horrible, heinous experience for me. I would rather that any day than what I experienced going through benzo withdrawal.
Right.
So, but during sleep, and there's the reason for that is actually called REM rebound. So, if you
Yeah.
don't mind, I could kind of share why we have
Sure.
nightmares, if you don't mind. So, um, benzos disrupt our sleep architecture, I was saying before, by increasing our light sleep phase while suppressing our deep sleep and REM sleep, which are crucial for recovery, as we kind of spoke about. But when we discontinue these drugs, the brain overcompensates, causing REM rebound. And this is actually one of the causes to vivid dreams, nightmares, and fragmented sleep. So I think it's important I think the science and understanding how the brain works is important, because I think that could give us some peace, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I still have rebound REM sleep, so I
Yeah.
still have vivid dreaming. There has been a phase where it was kind of milder, but as I got back into work, because I have to pay for my liability case and all that,
Yeah.
lots of stimuli. It's not productive for my sleep, but it is what it is, and I'm trying to manage and cope.
Yeah.
But the dreams, first in my acute phase, which lasted for months, it was blood, carnage, murder. I do have a laugh sometimes when I think about the crazy fucked up dreams that I had. I remember,
Yeah.
I think my first freaky dream was that I dreamt that I was at a birthday party or whatnot in an apartment complex, but I was on the parking lot chasing Dr. Heather Ashton, who is long dead. She was running away from me, but I wanted to grab her because I was like, tell me what to do. Tell me how to get off of this shit. And I was like, oh, that's a weird dream. So obviously this is in the phase where I am doing my research and I find the Ashton manual and stuff. And then just even more crazy dreams. The singer Adele, I mean, great singer, not particularly a fan, but like great music. I dreamt that I was her personal assistant in dream one and going to a theme park. And then the second dream, she was singing at a church. I don't go to church, but I was in the church and she was singing for me. Later, so about celebrities I was dreaming about dildos for some odd reason. All these dildo dreams. I was saying to my partner, I'm having these crazy dreams about dildos. And just the weirdness. And now in the phase where I'm currently at is that I've been dreaming a lot about everything that's going on in my current life. So the way that I see it, like I was on benzos for 5 years on a very high dose before this journey of trying to come off of it happened. So all of that information that, over those 5 years, I wasn't sleeping properly, obviously. So I just say like my brain is like a computer, severely fragmented, and it's like doing the defrag thing now. It's trying to, in its own particular way, construct the memory and times and emotions of all the things that I've missed the past few years. That's how it feels to me. Like memories are coming back. I lost so much of my memories. I'm remembering things, places, people that I totally forgotten about. So it is annoying, all of these dreams and stuff and the rebound REM stuff, but I think it serves a purpose.
Yeah, no, it's quite interesting. I have to say, this is one of the most common symptoms, right? We're talking about like insomnia, nightmares. This is super common. This is, you can start having this taking as prescribed. I mean, I remember my nightmares just taking as prescribed were heinous. Man, I mean, the amount of guns I had in my mouth in my dreams, like the amount of like nothing positive. But I also think, there was an interesting point at month 18 into bind, my dreams started changing. And it was like I would have these heinous dreams and then these dreams that would come in with messages, things that I had to deal with, things I had to face. And I also think it's important that like if we're constantly having repeated dreams that come in that feel different than these other heinous dreams, maybe there's a message there, because for me it was a message and it was something I started working on. And sometimes, I don't think sometimes, I think always, for us to really kind of have like come out on the other side fully healed, we have to go in and we have to do that inner work. And so that was very much my path. And so my dreams became a a bit of a mentor at some point, and that didn't happen until month 18 into bind, and it was just repeated randomly. It was like normalish dreams in between war. I mean, it's like a psychological warfare, and now I'm having these
Mhm.
dreams. I'm like, really, dude? You now want to, like, I'm now having these dreams? Leave me alone. But I took it as a sign to start working on myself, and I did. And that was kind of like, and now my body's not healed, my mind is not healed, my vessel is completely damaged. I'm not going to lie. I am very protracted. I won't lie, but my heart is healed. So like that was the blessing and the gift that came out of such heinous criminal
Right.
experience. And that doesn't change the fact that the doctors are guilty for what, like, not informed consent. I just went to a gyno yesterday. I kid you not, Naftal, I kid you not. Like, I'm literally telling him what I'm going through, completely uneducated. And I love educating doctors because you just kind of see them fall apart. It's quite funny to me
Mhm.
at this point. But um, literally outside, everything I'm sharing with him and explaining how the neurotransmitters are damaged and all of these things, he starts pushing all these drugs on me. He starts pushing Ozempic. He starts to tell me maybe we should burn your uterus lining. Like, we haven't even done any testing. Not that I would ever do that, because I love my body. I will figure if I have any, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what he's talking about. I will be fine, and I'm not burning anything. He's just like, yeah, some women love to just burn their uterus, and we could do that with this procedure, and you could go on this drugs. And I'm like, it is like you're just sitting in an office of propaganda. It's literally
Yeah.
propaganda. They're just pushing their drugs. They don't understand. There's no informed consent. They don't understand the side effects. The clinical research that they're reviewing is literally sponsored by big pharma. I don't care what meta-analysis they're looking at. I literally could prove most of their meta-analysis, if not the whole thing, has sponsors by big pharma behind it. So it's just devastating. It's just devastating.
Mhm.
But I'm just ranting at this point.
No, that's it's fine. I think one thing that I want to add is sometimes I don't really complain these days about insomnia because I'm getting enough hours. That's been going on for a long time, and I'm very grateful for it. I do want to mention, even though I'm not off, the my cognition and my personality is returning to who I was before
Mm.
benzodiazepine poisoning. Basically,
Mhm.
I feel more me than I've been feeling more me for a long time now, for about a year or two now, than all of those years when I was actively on benzos, thinking it was medication and thinking that I needed it, blah, 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 blah. And just seeing the difference between that version that I didn't like. I didn't like the version that I had become on benzos, not knowing it was because of the benzos,
Yeah.
but just seeing that process of becoming more me because there's less of this poison inside me is very gratifying. So I just wanted to add that. Right. So, what are the things that help you now for insomnia? We've discussed a few of these
Yeah.
things, but maybe there's additional things where you're like, this is helping me. I think you mentioned about something about melatonin and glasses or something.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that, because right now my body naturally sleeps. Like I said, like I can tell I use different neural pathways to sleep. My brain is a whole different brain than just a couple years ago. So I don't it's not something I worry about anymore. I go to sleep. I know I'm going to sleep. Sometimes if I go to sleep too early, it's radical acceptance and I'll get to bed. So right now there's nothing there for me. It's very natural at this point, though I wake up and it's just a lot of radical acceptance. But the things that I used to do that I think helped, well, we could kind of go through the list a little bit. So I
Hmm.
used a sunrise lamp. And I'm not saying that that actually helped me with sleep, because that's presuming we have healthy circadian rhythms, and we don't, because our melatonin is
Hmm.
jacked through this. But I actually used it more of to remind me it was the benzo. So I actually wrote on it, it's the fucking benzo, stay calm. Like, so when I would, around the time I would wake up, it would already start going on, because for a long time, literally for a very long time, there was no convincing me it was the benzo. Like, my husband kept telling me it was the benzos. I think a part of me that had hope like hung on to that, but a very large part of me which is actually an effect of the drug. This is called spellbinding. The drug convinces you it's not you. It convinces you that it's something else. That's literally a part of this process. And so I could not believe it was the benzos, this little white pill that the doctor prescribed. Could never believe it. So anyway, I needed something to remind me so I didn't just go jump out the window every morning. So the sunrise lamp helped me there. I also, so for me, I deal with a lot of electrocutions. I started to deal with severe electrocutions when I entered into bind. I couldn't open my mouth an inch. I couldn't turn my head an inch. I couldn't lay on my back. I still can't lay on my back. I couldn't turn to my left in bed. I mean, it was everything I did, I would be electrocuted. It was one of the most horrific experiences. But I would say at between year 2 and 3 of bind, I started to be able to turn to my left. So I would have to like roll onto my stomach and turn to the left. Because before that, once I turned, I would get electrocuted. So anyway, I started only doing that when I would go to bed. And because my body started associating turning left to sleep, I would turn left and out. It was kind of like this magical button that I now had because I laid on my I laid facing to my right the entire time, that once I did something different, it was like, okay, now this is a new association to bed. So I say that because people could, if they go lay in the living room, they lay facing their right. If they could keep one side specifically only to bedtime, that could help. Again, that could help build neural pathways to associating that with bedtime. I dealt with severe neuropathy through my head, and occipital neuralgia. So something my husband did, and this is something I'm very fortunate that I had a caretaker and I had him there to help me. He would put pressure on my eyebrows. The winning spot was almost always at the end of the eyebrow, but sometimes it was other parts of the eyebrow. He would put pressure with his hands, and that would help me get to sleep because it was I would throw up. I threw up every day for 2 years because of occipital neuralgia. And that's why I have to wear those Theraspec orange glasses, which we'll get into because that could also help with sleep. But it was so severe. It was like I needed someone to just put some pressure on my forehead, and that would help me knock out. Again, if I woke up in the middle of the night, I would just radically accept, like my cortisol increased. I may be up for 2 hours or a little longer. And if I go to sleep after, great. These glasses that you just brought up, so your listeners can't see it, but I'll explain them. They're Theraspec glasses. I got them specifically actually for the occipital neuralgia. Occipital neuralgia, for your listeners, so they know, is the compression of the occipital nerve on the back that shoots through the neck, through the back of the head, the occipital part of the brain, and shoots through the eyes. It is probably, I would say, the most physical difficult symptom I experienced through this whole time. And this is, I've dealt with I've had over 200 symptoms. Occipital neuralgia was definitely the worst for me because I was throwing up every day because of it. But this helped me manage the occipital neuralgia. I would be able to start looking at a screen a little bit. I came across these much later on. But these glasses also help produce melatonin. So if someone's interested, you could go to Theraspec website. They actually specialize in brain injuries. So that was why I knew about the brand, because they specialize in brain injuries, and it's their sleep brand. They have multiple colors. I've tried a bunch of different ones. This one was the best one for me for the occipital neuralgia and the sensitivity to light, but it also helps produce melatonin, which can help go to sleep. So someone could just wear them just a couple hours before bedtime and see if that helps them. I figure that's just worth mentioning. And then I know we kind of talked about it earlier about somniphobia. Somniphobia, again, is the fear of sleep. This is separate from insomnia that we develop because of the drugs. We develop also, some of us or many of us develop somniphobia. And again, it's separate from insomnia. And I think that could be really hard because our heart starts to increase, our heart's racing, we start sweating when the sun goes down. We're so scared. Are we going to sleep? Are we going to sleep? And that's a difficult thing. And I know we have so little things that we can do because we have to try to go down the natural route as much as possible. We do want to try to avoid adding multiple drugs because, again, all psychiatric drugs can come with its own syndrome. They all can come with their own protracted withdrawal syndrome. So it's important to keep that in mind. But something maybe that could help the somniphobia is doing a CBT worksheet. So I think it's about try to change our beliefs. Again, it's not sitting in a protocol and having someone like walking us through it per se, but you could look on, if anyone was interested, they could just Google cognitive processing therapy worksheet. And it's a worksheet to help actually change your beliefs. And doing that worksheet and ending up ultimately letting yourself know that this is a byproduct of the drug. You do have the ability to sleep. Like our sleep will go back at some point, and there are things that we could do to help ourselves. And you won't not heal. The idea is to just help yourself to not increase your suffering, because insomnia, it really feels like one of the worst symptoms. So anyway, I'm
Yeah.
just mentioning that because I think somniphobia is different than insomnia, but so many of us deal with it. And I'm just trying to suggest or offer something that could possibly help. And so much stems from our beliefs. Even though the beliefs have been altered by the drug, we could help re-alter them as much as possible, and give ourselves grace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think things that helped me and are still helping me is, I think it's very important, the bedroom where I'm sleeping.
Yep.
Is it quiet? Is it dark?
That's right.
I'm very keen on darkness.
Yep.
And especially in the beginning when you're so sensitive to lights and sounds and stuff. I would, if you can, invest in a good mattress and a good bed.
That's right.
I haven't been sleeping in the same bed as my partner for years now because of this.
Same.
This started once I started coming off of the drug, and I wasn't sleeping. I was like, and I thought, I didn't know it was the benzos, and I didn't know anything about mind and what this was, but I was like, I hear everything. I hear people walking 6 blocks away from me. How is this possible? Obviously, it was the benzo, but I didn't know. So I decided on sleeping separately, and we've done so ever since my journey began. Hopefully, once I completely recover, if I completely recover, but I'm assuming that I will, that we can sleep in the same bed again. But for now, it's just, the snoring annoys me. And I have certain, he doesn't really mind lights. And I'm like, no, I need darkness and I need fresh air. The temperature needs to be just right, not too cold, not too warm, specific blankets. I am really itty-gritty, what's the word? Like, I'm very particular about what I want in my bedroom, and that's very important to me. As we deal with mind, we talk about everything, so I'm gonna get a little raunchy here maybe, but we talk about shitting and stuff and whatever, because this affects everything. I masturbate before I go to sleep most of the time. It helps. I'm a man, it needs to come out, because else I will wake up with a massive boner, and I'm like, oh, this boner is in the way. So for the men listening, and it makes you a little bit tired too, so that helps me. Geez, what else helps me? I think the main thing is if I wake up every night in the middle of the night, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm like, okay, I'll just go to the bathroom, pee, and go back and hope that I'll fall asleep. If I don't, I don't. If I do, that's great. Typically I will wake up once or twice a night, and as long as I'm getting the hours, I'm grateful. What else? I try not to eat a lot before I go to bed, especially sugars and stuff. I try to stay away from that.
That's right.
So that is something that has helped me, I think. Gosh, what else? And what I've been doing since this journey, sleep or no sleep, I will get up in the morning. I will get out of bed, even if I'm destroyed. I won't, like, I think you mentioned this earlier, I won't linger in bed. I'm like, okay, I didn't sleep, or I barely slept, too bad. And I don't do naps. I think there's been 1 or 2 incidents where I did take a nap because I had like 3 hours, 4 hours in a week, and my body was just saying, you need to crash right now. And I did. But other than that, I don't do naps. I think there's a theory about trying to reset sleep. I guess this is for normal people that aren't harmed, where you stick it out. You maybe you haven't slept, but you make sure that you go to bed whenever you should be going to bed, and avoid naps. For some people, I've heard in mental withdrawal, I've heard from some people in the community that they do thrive on naps. So I guess it's very personal, but for me, it doesn't work. It never worked for me before benzos. I never used to take naps. So those are the things that help me.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
no, that's really helpful, and you're right about the sleep that's kind of actually part of the CBTI protocol, right? They actually suppress your sleep in the beginning. You have to go to sleep later, right? To help build sleep, and that at that time that had helped me. That was definitely not something that could help me through benzo withdrawal and benzo injury. But yeah, naps are an interesting thing because like for me, if I took a nap, I knew it was going to affect my sleep that night. But sometimes, like my brain and I mean, I was tired all the time, but there were points where the brain and the body were just shutting down. And I learned to respect that. Like at this point in my journey, I now respect the body. And it's like, if the body is telling me, the mind and like together, it's time to take a nap, I'm going to respect it. But I try to generally avoid it, to keep some type of sleep, to make sure that my sleep is not altered too much, because it's also true that we do develop sleep behaviors really easily. And I think this is related to the dopamine, the reward system, and how we like, it's like you could have one messed up night or two messed up nights, and then the body just wants to keep repeating that. And something that I actually did, because you actually reminded me, something that I actually did was, if that started to happen after like a few nights, I would sleep in a different bedroom. I was fortunate that I have multiple bedrooms. Someone could maybe use like a cot, or if they have any other option, just sleep in a different area, because that actually helped me restart a new sleep behavior. What benzos do to the brain is fascinating in the worst way possible. It really is.
Mhm.
But I'm
It
just
is. It
mentioning
is.
that because that helped me as well.
Yeah. And something else, which I should have done sooner, and is really interesting how this came about. Long story short, I never liked coffee, and I never understood why people drank coffee. And then at age 34, in my long ass benzo journey, I got switched from a short acting benzo to a long acting one because the other one was out of stock. And it made me wobbly and woozy. And I was like, oh, I don't know what this is. And I tried to counter that by drinking coffee. So as of age 34, I
Mhm.
started to drink coffee. And as I went into the bind and withdrawal journey, I was still on coffee. And it's only been a year now that I substituted coffee for decaf.
Mm.
I attempted cold turkey coffee, not a good idea because I got really sick and headaches
Mm.
and stuff. So I kind of tapered with my way down. But within a week, I was switched to decaf. And if I don't have coffee, that's fine too. It's kind of still the morning ritual for me. But I wish I'd done that sooner, because listening to the podcast about this, the scientists with the sleep stuff, caffeine is not really good for sleep. So I wish I'd done that sooner. And it's really easy. Is it called grinded coffee that
You try filtered coffee? Is it filtered?
filtered coffee. So yeah, filtered. So you can basically combine the caffeinated one with the decaf, and that's how you can taper. Or if you're like used to doing 5 cups in the morning or whatnot with caffeine, you can go to 4 to 3. If we're tapering, we will find a way. We've become experts on how to do
Yeah,
this probably. So that is something that I think has helped me. I think I've been sleeping
yeah.
better also because I ditched caffeine. So
It's a stimulant. That and
yeah.
alcohol. And alcohol is a neurotoxin. I mean, if anyone could remove anything, remove the alcohol, because it is
Yes.
a
Yes.
neurotoxin, and we've already have enough neurotoxicity. It can set.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes sense. Coffee is a stimulant. Any type of
Yeah.
stimulants. If we could,
Yeah. Even
everyone's doing
sugars,
their
maybe.
best,
Yeah.
I feel like everyone is just, we're all just trying to survive and make it to the end. And I know there is an end, but some of us, it could take a long time. And so I
Yeah.
think the thing about us is that like we're kind of in this journey with a lot of you listening. Like we're here with
Yeah.
you. For me, it's like I know I sound functional and I can look healthy and all of this. That it's so far from the truth. After this, I'll cry from the pain. I have to dissociate from my body to do these interviews. So I just want people to know,
Mhm.
like at least like I'm in this with you guys, and I know that there's another side, and there's something I can share there that I think could give a lot of hope. But I may wait to the end for that.
I think I'm now going into year 4 of
Mm.
bind, and well, I think bind actually was was from day one that I was started to take the drug. A whole other discussion. Let's say of trying to come off of this, and I'm doing a long hold, as a lot of people know. I'm doing a lot better. I'm able to work almost. Some weeks it's full time, so that's crazy. With the exception, my first shift starts at 3 p.m. because I'm a night owl, or a wolf, whatever. I'm doing a lot better, even though I still have 5 milligrams of diazepam to get rid of, which I intend to do safely and whenever I feel ready. I also have shitty days, and I'm very functional doing this. I've been very functional, and I guess I've been lucky for that. But yeah, I still have shitty days here and there. So some of the people that are going to be listening to this episode, because I remember being so sleep deprived and so obsessed and so destroyed by the lack of sleep that obviously I thought, is this ever going to get better? What would you want to say to the people listening now that are thinking, I haven't slept in 6 months, or, the agony, the torture of it? What would you want to say to the people, those specific people that are listening?
Yeah, I mean, I understand how heinous insomnia is. And I agree. I think it's the worst symptom because it increases all our other symptoms. But so many benzo warriors have walked before us, have gone through the exact thing you are experiencing, and are on the other side to tell the story. And so that's like, there's so many people. I cannot tell you how many people reach out to me on TikTok, for example, where I do a lot of videos. People reach out and they share their story. It's unbelievable. And they're on the other side of this. And so, and I've also been trained and educated that even if we don't sleep, we still heal. I know that is hard to believe or understand when we're not sleeping, because often it feels like it's just making things worse. And in many ways it is. I think there are ways it makes us worse. But we stare underneath, deep down, our nerves, our neurotransmitters are still healing. And something that I was told a lot going through my journey was like all the pain that we're going through is a byproduct of healing. For the nerves are very painful when they heal. And we have such severe nerve pain, many of us, like nervous system damage, that it's a very painful process. And so sometimes if it can help you, maybe consider like, this pain is a byproduct of healing. And we really do make it on the other side. There's so many benzo warriors on the other side that are a byproduct of this. So, just keep holding on and just keep fighting, because there's so many. I know how heinous this is. There's also a lot of gifts, and then we do make it to the other side. There's nothing that will distort you on your path. There's nothing. You've experienced the worst human illness that walks today. There is no illness that takes away the mind, body, and spirit. There is none. Someone show it to me, because I have yet to see it. And so when you endure this, you can endure anything after. And it's, I think there's a lot of gifts that come out of this journey. I really do.
Yeah. And I want to compliment that, basically all that you said, and maybe add that if you're listening to this, that means that you are aware of mind, you're aware of the damage, as I wasn't for a long time, wasn't aware. So that is like the first step into healing, knowing what the problem is, which is the benzodiazepine. And yeah, poorly doesn't even cut it. Like I barely slept for at least 1.5 years, and I'm sleeping so much better now. It's not perfect, but it's manageable. So yeah, I'm living testament of that it will get better. So keep the faith and keep going. That's the most important thing. Keep going.
I love that. You're 100% right. And the same in my case, right? Like I'm 3 years into Bind and I sleep every day. We do that. There is another side. We just have to keep going, as what you were just saying.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time again. And I wish you well on your healing journey, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Naftal. I'll speak to you soon. Okay.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.